The map is a typical States of Siege map. In the middle of the map you have a space representing the area that you need to defend against the attacks of the enemies. In this case, this area is Montreal, and then there are tracks departing from that area, and at the opposite end of each of these tracks you have a marker representing the armies of the enemies. These armies will be traveling towards the central space. If one of them manages to take control of the central space, then you lose the game. On this map you also have spaces that are connected, one to each of the tracks, and these are the spaces where you will place the leader that will be leading the army on the corresponding track. The card deck for this game is divided in two sections, a blue title section and a red title section. You shuffle the two sections of the deck separately, and then you will place the red cards at the bottom. However, in this game, the bottom is not just the part of the deck that goes under the other part, but it is a separate section of the deck that should not be mixed together with the top section. So actually the rules suggest that you place the bottom face up and perpendicular to the top of the deck, which I find particularly inelegant. So what I do is I just place them separate like this, but then it is important that you remember to make a discard pile somewhere else on the board, because you should not mix the discard pile with the bottom, and again you should not mistake one for the other, and you should always keep these two sections of the deck separate. During the game, some of the cards that you play will go to the discard pile, some of the cards will actually be added to the bottom, and some of the cards will be simply removed from the game. There will be a card in the deck that will instruct you to shuffle the bottom into the main deck, and then you will start playing again, discarding some of the cards, starting to format at the bottom, removing some of the cards, and you will keep revealing cards and playing until either the enemies take control of the central area on the board, in which case you lose the game, or all of the cards that are left in the game are in the bottom section of the deck, or there are simply no cards available anymore. If one of these last two conditions applies, then you win the game. At the beginning of each turn, you will draw several cards from the deck, 3 cards each turn earlier in the game and 4 cards each turn later in the game. Cards may indicate that a special event happens. In this case, you just read the text on the card and then you resolve that event. You may have an action that you add to your hand and you'll be able to play it later by spending action points. The cards may bring into the game enemy reinforcements or friendly reinforcements. These reinforcements will be useful later in combat, so you just add the card to the pool of the owning player, by which I mean either the eye of the board or yourself, or similarly the card may bring a leader into the game, an enemy leader, a friendly leader, and again in this case you just add the leader to the pool of the owning player. When you draw a friendly leader, you will place the leader face up in front of you. When you draw an enemy leader, you will add that leader to the map and you will roll a die to determine the track where that leader must be added. Leaders have a number representing the rating of that leader, and that number is used during combat. Leaders also have a reputation track, and you will use these markers here to keep track of the present reputation of the leaders. The reputation of the leaders will go up and down during the game depending on how they perform. If the reputation goes up, then the leader receives certain advantages. If the reputation goes down too much, then the leader is sacked. That is, the leader is added to the bottom of the deck. Leaders also have a strength track recording a number of battalions that the leader has under his control at the present time. Leaders enter the game with the maximum allowed number of battalions, but then they lose battalions during the game, and if the number of battalions that the leader controls goes down to 0, then the leader is removed from the game. Last but not least, the friendly leaders have special abilities printed on the card of the leader, and they can use that ability during the game. So drawing cards will generate random events and will give you and the AI of the board resources that will be used in later phases of the game. When you're done drawing cards, you will advance enemy armies that are associated with a leader. Unled enemy armies do not advance in this phase. Enemy armies will advance on their track by a number of boxes equal to the rating of the leader that is leading them. In this case, for example, this army could advance by 2 boxes, which is pretty scary. However, when an enemy army enters a space containing a fortress, then that army has to stop, cannot advance further for that turn, and actually you will have a chance of attacking that army and pushing them back where they came from. After the enemy advance and the fortress combat is resolved, then finally you enter the French phase of the turn, which is the phase in which you get to execute actions. In this phase, you receive a number of action points equal to the number of leaders that you have in play. You have 4 leaders, then you get 4 action points for that turn. That number can be modified by several factors, but this is the general idea. And you can spend your action points in different ways. You can spend an action point to play an action card, in which case you simply resolve the action described on the card, or you can spend an action point to give a battalion to one of your leaders that has lost battalions. However, the maximum number of battalions that can be returned to your leaders can only be equal to the number of trading posts that you have on the board. No more than those. You have 3 trading posts on the board, then you can spend up to 3 action points to return 3 battalions to one or several of your leaders, because you can give more than 1 battalion to 1 leader in a turn if you so wish. And again, if you have enough trading posts to do that, that means that you need to build them, because there aren't any on the map at the beginning. You can spend 2 action points to build a trading post, but you have to be careful where you place it on the map, because then if an enemy army enters a space containing a trading post, the trading post is gone. In a similar fashion, you can spend 2 action points to add a fort to the map. Forts act exactly like fortresses. That means that they halt enemy movement and they give you the opportunity to fight against the enemy as soon as the enemy enters the space containing the fort. And last but not least, you can spend an action point to initiate an attack against an enemy army. Combat may occur during the British phase, when a British army enters a fortress space, and or during the French phase, when you initiate an attack. Some battles will be minor engagements. That means that only one side has a leader participating to the battle, and minor engagements follow a slightly different procedure, but the main type of battle is the one in which there is a leader for each of the 2 sides. Once leaders have been committed to the battle, you, the player, have the option of committing auxiliary forces in case you have any available and you choose to do so. And the enemies may also have auxiliary forces joining the fight in case the enemies have forces available that are instructed by their cards to join the fight. For example, this card here will join battles on the white track, the Champlain track. Once the total of the forces participating to a battle has been determined, then you have to determine the tactical initiative. Extremely important, because the side that has tactical initiative will fire first, meaning that the other side may fire back with an already weakened force. To determine tactical initiative, you roll 1d6 for each side. You add the rating of the leader to the roll for that side. Other modifiers may apply based on the location where the battle is taking place, and or based on the type of units involved in the fight. At that point, the side with the higher total has tactical initiative and fires first. If there is a tie, the leader with superior reputation wins the initiative. In this case, for example, Amherst has a better reputation than his opponent, and he would win the initiative in a tie against that opponent. To conduct fire, you use the bucket of dice system. That means that you will roll a die for each battalion of the leader involved in the fight, and for each point of combat strength of the auxiliary forces committed to that battle. In this case, for example, the British would roll 11 dice total, which is, pretty scary and bad for you. For each 5 or 6 that is rolled, a hit is inflicted on the enemy. Hits are usually absorbed by the battalions belonging to a leader. Some auxiliary forces may have the special ability of absorbing hits, but for example this one doesn't. Usually it is the leader that takes the hits. Then the side without the tactical initiative fires back. In case a leader has been completely eliminated, still the auxiliary forces get to fire. At least they may inflict some casualties on the opponent. Once both sides fired, if one of the two leaders has been eliminated and the other one hasn't, then the surviving leader is the winner. In case both leaders survived, then the leader that inflicted the most casualties on the opponent is the winner of the battle. And based on who the winner is, the marker of the British army involved in the fight may remain in the location in which it is, or it may be retreated along its track.